Francis Ngannou has vacated his UFC title.
Well, did he vacate it?
Well, his contract expired and he didn't re-sign and they couldn't come to an agreement.
The UFC didn't come to agreement. I think that the UFC regrets this. I think this is a bad move. I understand the UFC is trying to protect themselves and they're trying to protect, they're basically trying to protect themselves with every single deal they make because every deal they make is precedence for another person on the roster.
And that's how it is in the NBA now. The league minimum is like $1 million for if you never play, sit on the bench the whole time.
100%.
Yeah.
And that is generally how things move in sports. Eventually, the longer you build the brand, the more the people that are part of the brand or the athletes that are part of the brand end up getting paid.
Yeah.
So what's really interesting about this specifically is you don't ever want to lose your heavyweight champ. That is the baddest man on the planet.
Yeah, literally.
If he goes to another organization, as the UFC, you can't say you have the baddest man on the planet anymore.
Yeah.
If I'm the UFC, I roll the dice one more time. I say, take whatever you want for the Jon Jones fight. We'll give you one more. And you don't want to deal with Francis anymore? You go one more fight, bare minimum. Hope Jon Jones beats him.
Yeah.
And if Jon Jones beats him, you say, hey, go on, do your thing. We don't want to deal with you. Or you have all the leverage in the negotiation.
Okay.
But right now, the UFC, if Francis Ngannou goes to the PFL, he goes to Bellator, those organizations have the greatest MMA fighter in the world. The most dominant one and the most badass person.
Maybe not the most technical.
Yes, not the most technical, et cetera, but the pound for pound best is that man.
Mm-hmm.
He could beat up any other person alive.
Probably.
If you're an organization, you want to make sure you have that.
But his comments of the requests that he was making in the UFC were very clearly going to be something that had to be applied to the whole league. Sponsorship, they're not going to give future precedent. Like you said, sponsorship, health insurance, they're going to give it to him. He mentioned it on Helwani that it's not even for me. I can afford health insurance. What about the guy that gets paid 10 and 10? And then the third one was having an advocate within the negotiating. So having a type of...
So let's assume that he's doing this. Let's assume that Francis is doing this for the other fighters, which I think is... Yeah, I mean, listen, I assume anybody in a position like that, you want to help out your brothers and sisters, but at the same time, you're trying to get what you deserve as well, right? And I would in no way fault him for trying to do that. But yeah, let's assume some of these things would also trickle down to the other fighters. At the end of the day, Francis wants to go and do a boxing match where he can make tons of money. And if that's the reason they didn't let him do it, dumb, because you let Conor do it.
Yeah.
And you made tons of fucking money letting Conor do it. So why not just let Francis go fight Tyson Fury, have some massive $100 million fight once again? Why not let your fighters go into other sports and box if it's the most popular thing and just take 50% like you already did? It just builds up your fighter. Or do you think that it's going to expose the UFC in the way that Jake Paul has exposed the UFC, in that like the striking isn't as elite as people thought it was?
Basically, the fighters are your products, and anytime you're letting the product out of your control, you're opening yourself up in some way.
Yeah.
Either they get injured, either they're training for that, either they realize they can make more money somewhere else, or it exposes their striking abilities, blah, blah, blah.
But so far it hasn't hurt the brand. The brand has only grown.
But they've only done it one time.
And it grew.
Yeah, but it's like you open yourself up.
I mean, if you look at the top 5 pay-per-views in the UFC history, they're all Conor McGregor. And I think 3 of them come after the fight with Floyd. So after the loss.
Interesting.
I think it was 2 more Dustin fights.
Yeah.
And then maybe the other 3 are before. But like still, it's like there's still interest. There's still, I mean, Conor's just a superstar. For me, it seems like you do not let the baddest man on the planet go. You give it to him. Give him one fight, see if Bones can beat him. If Bones beats him, you don't have to deal with him anymore.
But he might not
don't let him go.
They might give him one fight and he just goes, well, you guys are trying to wait till I get fucking beat? Like, fuck that.
There's a number where people accept it.
It feels like they're trusting the business model, which is we're going to save money on fighters, and we're going to build them up, and they're going to get their PR, and they can make their money however they make it, and then we're going to keep this train moving. And the way we do it is by keeping you guys maybe underpaid. Now, what I'm wondering, and this could be stupid, but is there a world where this kind of becomes the norm, where you build up your fighter as an MMA superstar, whatever, and then you go take big money fights somewhere else? Theoretically, even PFL. Like Jake Paul can be like, look, we'll do pay-per-views with only the biggest stars. The rest of the fights, who cares? But we don't ever care about who Jake Paul's undercard is. I never care. But I'm gonna pay for the fight. So if Jake Paul could get hey, let's get Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou at PFL. We'll give you guys a great deal. It'll build up the brand. It'll build up the league. I have equity in the league. We sell that down the road. That could be crazy and could not work at all, but just something I thought of.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. This one to me really sticks out. Like it just really sticks. That is the baddest man on the planet.
Yeah.
Nobody can beat that guy up on the planet.
Yeah.
You need him on your roster.
Where's PFL getting money? Do we know?
I don't know. I'm sure they just got some big money investors. And as we know, you don't have to pay the guys that much.
Yeah.
Right? So you have, let's say like, yeah. Let's say they get it. You go.
Now that Francis said the altruistic version of this, he can't go back without a massive change if they just offer him a shit ton of money or permission to take another fight.
He can, though.
He would look like a...
He would, but people forget.
They will forget.
They got a couple things, but I'm wondering, like,
I agree
why
with
haven't they
Akash.
priced it out? Like,
People will forget. And they have priced it out, and they have their models. And you're talking about people who've built, like, the greatest fight sport business in history. It's obviously unbelievable what they've done. And I think what Akash said is right, is that they're trusting the model. And sometimes the model doesn't allow you to make very difficult situations. But you know what they also did? They broke the model for Conor, and it fucking worked. Like it without a doubt worked. They had one of the biggest fights in history that they were part of the promotion. That was the boxing match with Mayweather. And Conor's fame just continued to skyrocket. And that trickled into 3 more UFC fights. There was the Cowboy Cerrone one. There was the Dustin Poirier and then another Dustin Poirier.
I think they might. Do you think maybe they don't think Francis is as charismatic as Conor?
He's not.
You look at he's not really at all. And I don't mean that as a shot at Francis, but Conor is a fucking star, dude. He just is and just was the whole time. So it's like, look, he's going to go fight Floyd, another superstar, legendary, whatever. Tyson is that, but Francis isn't going to be able to do what Conor did with that promo.
I'll be honest with you, dude. I don't think that they believe John Jones can beat Francis. And I don't think that they believe there's anybody on the roster that can beat Francis. So if they genuinely thought that John Jones could beat Francis, they would sign him up, and then he would lose, and then they could just bury him. I don't think that they think that Bones can do it. And if he exposes Bones, now they have no control over what's going on, and they have to deal with this guy constantly who's going to keep on pushing for more and more and more, which he should. Everybody should.
Yeah.
So I don't think that they have the confidence. I think that the situation they're in is they have the most dominant MMA fighter alive, and they have no ability to control his desires. And there may be other MMA fighters that are more willing to acquiesce.
Yeah.
And they're like, fuck it, we're just going to battle with this guy every single contract. It's going to be annoying. He's going to be talking shit about it. It's not going to work out. And maybe he doesn't draw. I have to look. I think he does draw. I think people want to see that motherfucker fight. When we all saw him, we saw him.
Yeah, we saw him against Cyril.
Where was it?
That was at
MSG, right?
Yeah.
That shit was ramped.
Oh, no, it wasn't.
Vegas, right?
It wasn't.
Phoenix, maybe?
It was LA or Phoenix. What was...
Yeah, I can't remember.
Maybe Anaheim or something like that?
Yeah.
But anyway, it was ramped. So, that was right. It was Anaheim. I think we saw it in Anaheim.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's what I think it is. I just don't think I think they believe that nobody can beat him. And they're like, we're just going to go through this nonstop, and we're not going to meet, so we just got to move on.
Yeah. It's kind of a shame, though. And PFL, if they have the money, they can start doing this with a lot of guys. And that's the hedge, I guess. That's what makes it interesting.
I mean, if I'm PFL right now, I'm on the phone with everybody that wears a sheet and a fucking ring on the top of it. And I'm going, do you have money? Do you have money? Hi, Saudi Arabia. Do you have money? Hi, Qatar. Do you have money? Hi, United Arab Emirates. Do you have money? Just give me $50 million, and then we can actually make this happen. Just give me $100 million, we can make this happen. You can own a competitive league, and now we have the guy. The guy.
Which apparently they have, good, local investors. They have... the guy that owns the Nationals is a big investor. Mm-hmm. Alex Rodriguez apparently put in $500 million.
Mm-hmm. Jesus.
A-Rod put in what?
Sorry. I just read the headline.
He invested at a $500 million valuation.
Yeah, $500 million valuation.
Got you.
But it's they have a bunch of people in the U.S. that are all putting money in. So it's if you're able to just crank up the heat and just be like, hey, every fighter, you want to make 25% more?
Yeah.
50% more?
And I don't know if those leagues will last, but I think they can push the MMA to be a little bit better toward their fighters.
More
Sorry,
equitable.
push the UFC to be a little bit more.
That's what's interesting. It's like if UFC is exponentially growing, forget about like the top pay that you pay fighters, but just bumping up base pay seems like an easy fix. But it feels like it has to be on Dana's terms, right? And then health, something in that.
The tricky thing with them is that they have so many fighters under contract, right? They're running a league. You got to think of the UFC as like the NBA and compare it to a league, not compare it to like other fight promotions, right? Because what they do is, like with boxing, you might have your promoter that you're signed to, but you can fight 15 different times if you can organize those fights. With the UFC, they have this many cards and this many fights per card, and they have a roster of probably hundreds of fighters. How do you insert? How do you slot? What do you do? And they've built a model that is actually fighter friendly in terms of their records. When fighters lose, they're not necessarily out. They're guys who've lost 2 or 3 times. They get a couple big wins in a row, and all of a sudden they're back in the picture.
Or a great loss.
Or a fucking great loss doesn't even hurt you that much.
Fight of the night, things like that.
It's really like the NBA or the NFL in that you're just seeing teams that you like go battle.
Yeah.
If the fucking Giants lose to the Cowboys, it's not like everybody goes, I'm no longer a fucking Giants fan.
Yeah.
The old model was much more disadvantageous to fighters.
Yes.
Like if you're in a like boxing promotion, things like that, because one thing could just wash your whole career.
Now, because of that, what happens is the fighters at the top don't make what they could in boxing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But the fighters at the bottom make way more than they would make if they were boxing. A no-name MMA fighter who is signed to the UFC, let's say they make $10,000 a fight and then $10,000 to win, $20,000 total. Do you know what a no-name boxer gets?
How much?
$1,500, maybe $1,000,
Wow.
$500. They're a no-name B-side fighter, essentially a guy who's brought in to lose,
Yeah.
right? Because he's fighting some up-and-coming guy. $1,500.
Wow.
Like, no, there's no interest. We would never go out to see it.
Yeah.
Now you can make money if you're one of these like local guys that has a draw. No different than being a comedian. You're from Long Island. You're fighting out in Long Island. You get the whole fucking Long Island to come out and watch you. You did it. You're a draw. You brought 5,000 people out. You're gonna get paid. I guess what I'm trying to say is the system is actually better for the young fighter. And that money comes, not the unknown fighter or the fighter that loses a little bit, but that money is coming from the top guys.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even look at MMA the way I would look at an NBA. I look at UFC the way I look at the NBA. I look at UFC the way I would look at what it is, which is a publicly traded company. When you have stock prices, you got to worry about it's constantly worrying about the bottom line and then maximizing profits. Let's maximize profits, minimize costs as much as we possibly
But
can.
you can't think that losing their best fighter is going to help their
I
stock
can
price.
if I think it's going to cost us so much to insure all these guys who are putting their lives on the line every time they fight.
Yeah.
The health insurance is probably fucking expensive.
Francis Ngannou has to go fight Tyson Fury right now.
Yeah.
And I can't fathom that he beats Tyson Fury because Tyson Fury is the greatest heavyweight that I've ever seen. But if he does, I mean, like,
Yeah.
what? I mean, like,
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, it's just what the hell is the UFC going to do? Everybody's going to be clamoring for a John Jones, if John Jones beats Cyril Gane, a John Jones Francis Ngannou fight. The whole world. They won't care who John is going to fight. John can fight every other heavyweight. And people are like, yeah, that's not really for the belt. If the belt is supposed to signify the best MMA fighter in the world, you don't really have the belt. Yeah,
But if
you
he-
got
yeah.
it.
Yeah, also to your earlier point that they don't think he could beat Francis. God, who's that guy? Stipe
Miocic.
Yeah, he said apparently once this fight was announced, he was like he hadn't said shit, and he was like, I got the winner of this. And they were like, it's interesting that you don't say anything when Francis might be fighting John Jones, but when Francis drops out, now you got winner.
And Francis apparently asked for 3 fights in the contract. One against John Jones, a rematch against Stipe, and then one more against John Jones. So it's not like he's ducking. It's not like he's trying to avoid. Like those are like Stipe is the greatest heavyweight of all time outside of Francis, and then fucking John Jones, the greatest MMA fighter of all time. Like,
Yeah.
and granted, I don't know what else he was asking for. I think but you can always wiggle. There's always room.
Yeah, you can always make a deal.
Yeah, I just think it's too valuable a property. Who cares if he's not as charismatic as Conor? You can't let the biggest and baddest. You can't let the baddest man on the planet go.
Yeah.
He
He really is the baddest man on the
He's
planet.
literally the baddest man on the planet.
Yeah.
You can't let him go.
Because as great as Fury is at boxing, if they got into an
If you're
octagon,
a street fight,
it's Francis.
and they're grabbing one another, and Francis goes for a fucking choke or a takedown or whatever. Once they're on the ground, God bless Tyson Fury, who is the greatest heavyweight I've ever seen. I genuinely believe he's the greatest heavyweight ever.
You're fighting a guy who crossed the desert just to make it to the UFC.
And Cyril's like, he's not, maybe doesn't have the best ground game, which I think is going to make his fight with Jones interesting, but he still wrestled well with Francis, and Francis still beat him. Yeah. It's a different level.
I mean, anyway, it's just, it sucks.